Some jobs are meant to be left behind, especially when the dead demand silence. Elliot had been the cemetery keeper at Briarwood Memorial for over 20 years. Tucked away at the edge of a sleepy town, the cemetery was sprawling, with crumbling tombstones that dated back centuries. Most of the locals avoided it, speaking in hushed tones about the strange happenings there. Elliot had heard the whispers, stories of voices echoing through the graveyard at night, shadows moving among the tombstones, and the faint sound of bells. But he'd never been one to believe in ghost stories. To him, it was just a job, a quiet place where he could work in peace. That changed one autumn evening. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Elliot was locking up the small caretaker's shed. The air was crisp, and leaves crunched under his boots as he made his way to the gate. But just as he reached for the padlock, he heard it, the faint sound of a bell, coming from deep within the cemetery. Elliot froze. It was faint but unmistakable, a soft, rhythmic chiming that sent a chill down his spine. He turned back toward the rows of tombstones, squinting into the gathering darkness. "Just the wind," he muttered, though he wasn't convinced. The sound persisted, growing louder as the minutes ticked by. Unable to ignore it, Elliot grabbed his flashlight and ventured back into the cemetery. The beam of light swept over the tombstones, illuminating weathered inscriptions and moss-covered statues. The bell's chime seemed to lead him, drawing him toward an older section of the cemetery. This part hadn't been visited in years, the graves overgrown with ivy and forgotten by time. As he walked, the air grew colder, and an uneasy silence settled over the graveyard. Even the crickets had gone quiet. Finally, he found the source of the sound, a small, rusted bell tied to a metal stake planted in the ground beside a grave. It was one of the old grave-saver bells, used in the 19th century to prevent accidental burials of the living. If someone was buried alive, they could ring the bell to call for help. But no one used those anymore, and this one was ringing. Elliot's flashlight trembled as he read the name on the headstone, Margaret Willows, 1842 to 1899. The dates were barely visible beneath the grime. As he stood there, the bell fell silent. Elliot's breath caught as he noticed something else. The ground beneath the grave had shifted, the dirt loose and uneven, as if it had been disturbed. He took a step back, his heart racing. Suddenly, the bell rang again, this time violently, as if someone were yanking on the string. A low, guttural moan rose from the earth, and the loose dirt began to shift. Elliot stumbled backward, the flashlight beam jerking wildly as he tried to keep his footing. A hand broke through the soil. It was pale and skeletal, clawing at the air as if searching for something. Then another hand emerged, followed by a head. The figure, or whatever it was, crawled out of the grave with jerky, unnatural movements. Its face was gaunt, hollow eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. Elliot turned to run, but the figure spoke, its voice a dry whisper. "You let them forget me." The words froze him in place. He turned slowly to see the figure standing upright now, its tattered burial clothes hanging loosely from its emaciated frame. "I kept them alive," Elliot stammered. I kept their stories alive." The figure tilted its head, studying him. Then it raised a bony finger, pointing toward the caretaker's shed. The next morning, Elliot packed his things and left Briarwood Memorial for good. He didn't tell anyone what had happened, and he never looked back. But the locals noticed something strange. The graveyard's bell no longer rang, and the air around Margaret Willow's grave grew still, as if the earth itself had been silenced. To this day, no one dares visit Briarwood after dark. Some say Margaret finally found peace. Others say she's still waiting, her bell ready to call the next unlucky soul who forgets her name. What would you have done if you heard a bell in the dead of night? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more chilling tales. Until next time, stay safe and listen carefully.